Imagine a world where some of the most iconic places on Earth are no longer there. Cities sinking, islands vanishing, and coastlines eroding, all because of rising sea levels. Today, we're taking you on a journey to 15 places that are at risk of disappearing forever. From bustling metropolises to tropical paradises, these locations are fighting a losing battle against the relentless rise of the oceans. Let's dive in. New Orleans, USA. New Orleans, the vibrant heart of Louisiana, is no stranger to water. Built on marshland at the mouth of the Mississippi River, this city has been sinking since its founding in the early 18th century. But today, the situation is dire. Much of New Orleans lies between 5 to 10 feet below sea level, and it continues to sink at a rate of about 1 centimeter per year. Combine that with rising sea levels, and scientists predict that by 2100, the city could be 8 to 13 feet underwater. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 was a devastating reminder of the city's vulnerability, flooding 80% of New Orleans and accelerating its subsidence. The storm caused severe erosion of the surrounding wetlands, which act as natural barriers against storm surges. Despite efforts to build flood defenses, such as levees and pump stations, and elevate homes in low-lying areas, the future of this cultural hub remains uncertain. The French Quarter, the oldest part of the city, sits on slightly higher ground, but as the city expanded, newer areas were built on much lower, marshy land. This flat geography means that every foot of elevation matters when it comes to flood risk. The city's unique architecture, with homes built on stilts, is both a nod to its history and a necessary adaptation for survival. However, as sea levels rise and the land continues to sink, the question remains, how long can New Orleans hold on? The city's rich culture, music, and traditions are at stake, making its fight against the rising waters a battle for its very soul. Venice, Italy. Venice, the floating city, is a place of timeless beauty. But beneath its picturesque canals lies a grim reality. Venice is sinking. Built on a network of small islands supported by wooden piles, the city has been slowly subsiding for centuries. In the 20th century, the extraction of groundwater exacerbated the problem, causing the ground to sink further. Today, Venice sinks by about 1 to 2 millimeters annually, while sea levels have risen by 32 centimeters since 1872. Frequent acqua alta events flood the streets, and predictions suggest that Venice could be underwater by 2100. This iconic city is a stark reminder of the delicate balance between human ingenuity and nature's power. The city's unique foundation, made up of millions of wooden piles driven into the mud, has proven vulnerable over time. Artesian wells drilled in the early 1900s for fresh water drained the water table beneath the city, causing the ground to subside. Although these wells were shut down in the 1960s, the damage was already done. Venice's charm is undeniable, but its sinking status also makes it a city on the edge of disaster. The MOSE project, a system of mobile floodgates designed to protect the city from high tides, offers some hope, but it is not a permanent solution. As the waters continue to rise, Venice's future hangs in the balance, threatening to erase a city that has inspired artists, writers, and travelers for centuries. Manhattan, USA. Manhattan, the beating heart of New York City, is sinking under the weight of its own skyscrapers. A recent study revealed that the city's 1.08 million buildings weigh a staggering 1.68 trillion pounds, causing the land to sink at a rate of 1 to 2 millimeters per year. Some areas, built on softer soil, are sinking even faster, up to 42 millimeters annually. Combined with rising sea levels, which are increasing twice as fast as the global average, Manhattan faces a growing risk of flooding. By 2050, the city could sink by up to 10 centimeters, putting its iconic skyline and millions of residents at risk. The study, published in the journal Earth's Future, highlighted that the sheer mass of the city's infrastructure is pressing down on the Earth, causing it to subside. While this process is natural, human activities like groundwater pumping and construction on artificial fill have accelerated it. The city's location on the Atlantic coast makes it particularly vulnerable to storm surges and heavy rainfall, which are becoming more frequent and intense due to climate change. The 2012 Hurricane Sandy was a wake-up call, flooding large parts of Manhattan and causing billions of dollars in damage. As the city continues to grow, with new skyscrapers rising every year, the pressure on the land will only increase. The question is, how much longer can Manhattan stay afloat? The Maldives. The Maldives, a tropical paradise in the Indian Ocean, is one of the most vulnerable nations to climate change. With an average elevation of just 3 feet above sea level, this island chain is at risk of being swallowed by the ocean. Sea levels in the Maldives are rising by about 3 millimeters per year, and the destruction of coral reefs, natural barriers against wave energy, has made the islands even more susceptible to erosion. If current trends continue, much of the Maldives could disappear by the end of the century, displacing thousands of people and erasing a unique culture. The Maldives is made up of 26 atolls and over 1,000 coral islands, but its total land area is just 115 square miles. The nation's highest point is only 8 feet above sea level, making it the lowest-lying country in the world. Rising ocean temperatures have caused mass coral bleaching events, weakening the reefs that protect the islands from wave energy. In 2016, 60% of the Maldives' coral reefs were damaged, leaving the islands more vulnerable to erosion and flooding. The government has taken steps to address the crisis, such as building artificial islands and relocating communities to higher ground, but these measures are only temporary solutions. The Maldives' plight is a stark reminder of the existential threat faced by small island nations in the age of climate change. For the people of the Maldives, the fight against rising seas is a fight for survival. Shanghai, China. Shanghai, one of China's largest and most populous cities, is sinking due to a combination of urbanization and groundwater extraction. The city has been subsiding for decades, with some areas sinking at a rate of over 10 millimeters per year. The weight of skyscrapers and infrastructure compresses the soil, while the overpumping of groundwater exacerbates the problem. With sea levels projected to rise by up to 3 feet by 2100, Shanghai faces a dual threat from sinking land and rising waters. This megacity is a microcosm of the challenges faced by urban centers worldwide. Shanghai's rapid growth over the past century has come at a cost. The city's reliance on groundwater for its burgeoning population has led to the depletion of underground aquifers, causing the land above to collapse. Additionally, the sheer mass of its skyscrapers, roads, and other infrastructure has accelerated the subsidence. The situation is particularly dire in areas built on soft soil, where the sinking is most pronounced. Rising sea levels, driven by climate change, compound the problem, increasing the risk of flooding in low-lying areas. The city has implemented measures to slow the subsidence, such as restricting groundwater extraction and injecting water back into the aquifers, but these efforts may not be enough to counteract the combined effects of urbanization and climate change. Shanghai's struggle is a stark reminder of the challenges faced by rapidly growing cities in an era of environmental uncertainty. If current trends continue, much of Shanghai could be underwater by the end of the century, displacing millions and disrupting one of the world's most important economic hubs. The Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands, a remote archipelago in the Pacific Ocean, are on the front lines of climate change. 5 of its islands have already been lost to rising seas, and the situation is only getting worse. With a population of just over 500,000, this nation is grappling with the loss of land, freshwater contamination, and the displacement of entire communities. The Solomon Islands serve as a stark warning of what the future holds for low-lying nations as sea levels continue to rise. The islands, which stretch across 11,000 square miles of ocean, are home to lush vegetation, coral reefs, and pristine beaches. However, their low-lying geography makes them particularly vulnerable to rising seas. The loss of 5 islands has already had a profound impact on the people who call this nation home. Entire communities have been forced to relocate, and traditional ways of life are disappearing as the sea encroaches further inland. The destruction of coral reefs, which act as natural barriers against wave energy, has made the islands even more susceptible to erosion. Rising ocean temperatures have caused mass bleaching events, weakening the reefs and leaving the islands exposed to the full force of the waves. The Solomon Islands' plight is a stark reminder of the existential threat faced by small island nations in the age of climate change. For the people of the Solomon Islands, the fight against rising seas is a fight for survival. California, USA. California's iconic beaches are disappearing at an alarming rate. Rising sea levels, driven by thermal expansion and melting ice sheets, are eroding the coastline. By 2100, up to 75% of California's beaches could be gone, with sea levels projected to rise by 2 to 7 feet. This erosion threatens not only the state's tourism industry but also the homes and infrastructure of millions of people living along the coast. California's battle against the ocean is a glimpse into the future of coastal communities worldwide. The state's 840 miles of coastline are home to some of the most famous beaches in the world, from Malibu to Santa Monica. However, these beaches are being washed away at an unprecedented rate. For every foot of sea level rise, the shoreline could retreat by more than 100 feet in some areas. The loss of beaches would have far-reaching consequences, from the destruction of coastal property to the disruption of ecosystems that rely on the shoreline. The state has implemented measures to combat erosion, such as beach nourishment projects and the construction of seawalls, but these efforts are costly and often only provide temporary relief. As sea levels continue to rise, California's beaches are at risk of disappearing entirely, taking with them a way of life that has defined the state for generations. The question is, how much longer can California hold back the tide? London, a city steeped in history, is facing a modern-day threat: rising sea levels. Situated along the Thames River, London is vulnerable to flooding as sea levels rise and storm surges become more frequent. The city's famous Thames Barrier, designed to protect against flooding, may not be enough to withstand future water levels. By 2050, much of London could be underwater if significant action isn't taken. This iconic metropolis is a reminder that even the most developed cities are not immune to the effects of climate change. The Thames Barrier, completed in 1982, was designed to protect London from tidal surges and has been raised over 200 times since its construction. However, as sea levels continue to rise, the barrier's capacity to protect the city is being tested. Rising global temperatures are causing polar ice caps to melt and ocean water to expand, leading to higher sea levels. The Thames River, which flows through the heart of London, is particularly vulnerable to these changes. The city has implemented measures to reduce flood risk, such as improving drainage systems and building flood defenses, but these efforts may not be enough to counteract the effects of climate change. London's rich history, from the Tower of London to the Houses of Parliament, is at risk of being lost to the rising waters. The question is, can this historic city adapt in time to save itself from the tide? Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos, Nigeria's largest city, is slowly being swallowed by the sea. Rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and unchecked urbanization have put this bustling metropolis at risk. By 2050, much of Lagos could be underwater, displacing millions of people and crippling the city's economy. The lack of adequate drainage systems and the destruction of natural barriers like mangroves have made Lagos particularly vulnerable. This African megacity is a stark example of the challenges faced by rapidly growing urban centers in the face of climate change. Lagos, home to over 20 million people, is one of the fastest-growing cities in the world. However, its rapid expansion has come at a cost. The city's infrastructure struggles to keep pace with its population growth, leading to overcrowding and inadequate waste management. During the rainy season, clogged drainage systems and poor urban planning result in devastating floods that paralyze the city. Coastal erosion, exacerbated by rising sea levels, is eating away at the city's shoreline, while the destruction of mangroves, natural buffers against storm surges, has left Lagos exposed to the full force of the ocean. The city's most vulnerable residents, many of whom live in informal settlements along the coast, are disproportionately affected by these changes. For Lagos, the fight against rising seas is not just an environmental issue but a social and economic one. If current trends continue, the city's future as a thriving economic hub is at risk, and millions of people could be forced to flee their homes. Honolulu, USA. Honolulu, the capital of Hawaii, is known for its stunning beaches and vibrant culture. But rising sea levels are threatening to erase one of its most iconic features: Waikiki Beach. By 2050, frequent flooding could render much of the area uninhabitable, displacing thousands of residents and devastating the local economy. Honolulu's struggle against the ocean is a reminder that even paradise is not immune to the effects of climate change. Waikiki Beach, with its golden sands and crystal-clear waters, is a symbol of Hawaii's natural beauty and a major driver of the state's tourism industry. However, the beach is disappearing at an alarming rate. Rising sea levels, driven by melting polar ice caps and thermal expansion, are eroding the shoreline, while high tides and storm surges are becoming more frequent and severe. In recent years, seawater has begun to flood Waikiki's streets and footpaths during high tides, a phenomenon known as sunny day flooding. This is a clear indication of how vulnerable the area has become. The loss of Waikiki Beach would have far-reaching consequences, from the destruction of luxury resorts and businesses to the displacement of residents who call this area home. Honolulu is taking steps to combat the effects of rising seas, such as building seawalls and replenishing sand on eroded beaches, but these measures may only provide temporary relief. The question is, how much longer can Waikiki hold on? Norfolk, Virginia, is one of the most vulnerable cities on the U.S. East Coast to sea level rise. The city is sinking at a rate of up to 6 millimeters per year, while sea levels are rising by about 3 millimeters annually. Combined, this means Norfolk is effectively losing land at a rate of 9 millimeters per year. The city's naval base, the largest in the world, is at risk, along with thousands of homes and businesses. Norfolk's battle against the ocean is a glimpse into the future of coastal cities worldwide. Norfolk's unique geography makes it particularly susceptible to flooding. Much of the city is built on low-lying land, and its proximity to the Chesapeake Bay and Atlantic Ocean leaves it exposed to storm surges and high tides. The city's naval base, a critical component of the U.S. military, is already experiencing frequent flooding, raising concerns about national security. In addition to its military importance, Norfolk is home to a vibrant community of over 200,000 people, many of whom are struggling to cope with the effects of rising seas. Flooding has become a regular occurrence, damaging homes, disrupting businesses, and straining the city's infrastructure. Norfolk is taking steps to address the problem, such as building floodwalls and improving drainage systems, but these efforts are costly and may not be enough to counteract the effects of climate change. For Norfolk, the fight against rising seas is a fight for its very survival. Alexandria, Egypt. Alexandria, one of the most iconic ancient cities, is slowly sinking into the Mediterranean Sea. The land is subsiding at a rate of over 3 millimeters per year, while sea levels are rising due to climate change. By 2050, one-third of Alexandria could be underwater, displacing up to 1.5 million people. This historic city, founded by Alexander the Great, is a reminder that even the most enduring human achievements are vulnerable to the forces of nature. Alexandria, Egypt's second-largest city, is home to over 6 million people and is a cultural and economic hub. However, its location on the Mediterranean coast makes it particularly vulnerable to rising seas. The city's land is sinking due to a combination of natural subsidence and human activities, such as the construction of dams upstream on the Nile River, which prevent the natural replenishment of silt that once fortified the delta's soil. Rising sea levels, driven by climate change, are compounding the problem, increasing the risk of flooding and saltwater intrusion into freshwater supplies. In recent years, flooding events have become more frequent and severe, damaging infrastructure and displacing residents. The loss of Alexandria would be a devastating blow to Egypt's cultural heritage, as the city is home to ancient landmarks such as the Bibliotheca Alexandrina and the Citadel of Capebay. For the people of Alexandria, the fight against rising seas is a fight to preserve their history, their homes, and their way of life. Kiribati, a small island nation in the Pacific Ocean, is on the brink of disappearing. With an average elevation of just 6.5 feet above sea level, Kiribati is one of the most vulnerable countries to rising seas. By 2100, much of the nation could be underwater, displacing its entire population. Kiribati's struggle is a stark reminder of the existential threat faced by small island nations in the age of climate change. This remote archipelago, made up of 32 atolls and one raised coral island, spans an area of ocean larger than India but has a total land area of just 313 square miles. The islands are home to over 110,000 people, many of whom live in densely populated areas like South Tarawa, the capital. Rising sea levels, driven by melting polar ice caps and thermal expansion, are eroding the island's coastlines and contaminating freshwater supplies with saltwater. The destruction of coral reefs, which act as natural barriers against wave energy, has made the islands even more vulnerable to storms and erosion. For the people of Kiribati, the loss of land is not just an environmental issue but a cultural and existential one. The government has explored options such as building artificial islands and relocating residents to other countries, but these solutions are fraught with challenges. Kiribati's plight serves as a powerful warning of the devastating impact of climate change on small island nations and the urgent need for global action to address this crisis. Bangladesh. Bangladesh, a country shaped by its rivers, is facing an unprecedented crisis. Rising sea levels and land subsidence are threatening to submerge much of the Ganges Delta, home to nearly 200 million people. By 2100, sea levels could rise by up to 4.5 feet, displacing millions and destroying fertile farmland. Bangladesh's battle against water is a testament to the resilience of its people, but the future remains uncertain. The Ganges Delta, which covers 2/3 of Bangladesh, is one of the most fertile regions in the world, but it is also one of the most vulnerable to climate change. Rising sea levels, combined with the sinking of the delta due to natural subsidence and the extraction of groundwater, are increasing the frequency and severity of flooding. Storms that once occurred once a decade could soon happen 3 to 15 times per year, driven by changing weather patterns and rising seas. For the people of Bangladesh, flooding has always been a part of life, but the scale and intensity of recent floods are unprecedented. Entire communities are being displaced, and traditional ways of life are disappearing as the water encroaches further inland. The government and international organizations are working to address the crisis, building flood defenses and promoting climate-resilient agriculture, but the challenges are immense. For Bangladesh, the fight against rising seas is a fight for survival, and the stakes could not be higher. Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is sinking faster than any other city in the world. Parts of the city are subsiding at a rate of up to 25 centimeters per year, and by 2050, nearly half of Jakarta could be underwater. The city's reliance on groundwater extraction and its location on swampy land have made it particularly vulnerable. Despite efforts to build flood defenses, Jakarta's future remains in jeopardy. This megacity is a stark reminder of the urgent need to address the causes and consequences of climate change. Jakarta, home to over 10 million people, is built on low-lying land crisscrossed by 13 rivers. The city's rapid growth has put immense pressure on its infrastructure, and the overpumping of groundwater has caused the land to sink. Rising sea levels, driven by climate change, are compounding the problem, increasing the risk of flooding and saltwater intrusion. In recent years, flooding has become a regular occurrence, damaging homes, disrupting businesses, and straining the city's resources. The government has taken steps to address the crisis, such as building seawalls and relocating the nation's capital to a new city on the island of Borneo, but these measures may not be enough to save Jakarta. For the people of Jakarta, the fight against rising seas is a fight for their homes, their livelihoods, and their future. The city's struggle is a powerful reminder of the urgent need for global action to address the causes and consequences of climate change. These 15 places are just the tip of the iceberg. As sea levels continue to rise, more cities, islands, and coastlines will face the same fate. The question is, what can we do to protect these places and the people who call them home? The time to act is now. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.